How we doing, everyone? How we doing? I believe we are live here. I am joined today by Alan Blair, WP Easy. Brother, how you been?
Good, mate. And yourself?
Very good, very good. Appreciate you coming on the channel. Round two, talking about betting
Round
the
two.
first time. And
You're
now,
becoming a celebrity.
yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. I'm loving it. It's great. I think we got a couple chatters in there, guys. If you can hear us and see us, that would be fantastic. If you would just leave us like a little something in the comments in the chat. I've been having some audio weirdness leveling wise, so if we do have any of that, if Alan's a little louder than me, just let us know and I'll try to fix it up as best as we can. But Alan's going to be doing a lot of teaching today here, so it's gonna be fantastic.
Well, sharing more
Yeah,
than teaching.
sharing's good. Sharing's good. So
Yeah.
off the bat, if people don't know you, Alan, do you want to kind of give a little bit about yourself, what you got going on, everything like that?
Okay. So I'm just a dev hack. Just love playing and learning. And basically, when I learn new ideas, I like sharing them out. So I've been doing that probably a couple of years. So quite a few pretty rough videos on YouTube. But it's all about the content, right?
Yeah,
so
that's for sure.
Yeah, so I started really doing web development maybe 18 months ago. Um, but the experience with PHP, JavaScript, whatnot goes back, back to the Macromedia Flash days and,
Hmm.
Adobe Flex and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
been playing around with stuff for many, many years. About 5 years ago, started a business where I had an IT business, and we found that we're finding a lot of clients that had issues with WordPress websites. So we were moving to our own hosting and fixing problems and just helping resolve issues. And so I've been involved with WordPress for a while, but only really building sites since January 23. So it's all still new and exciting to me. So everything I learn is like something shiny and new,
Yeah.
and it's great. It's like being a kid again.
Yeah. You got incredible content, man, for just like, just kind of getting deeper into it and deeper into it and everything like that. And I know we
Mm,
have a similar kind of path there with the different builders. Now we're on bricks and everything like that. So, yeah.
mm.
Also, I will drop the link in the chat to Alan's channel, WP Easy. Definitely go over there and subscribe if you have not already. Fantastic content. So, appreciate you being here, brother. What are we, kind of the context for today is, you reached out and
Mm,
about this one because I knew you were filming a video on this, and we pretty much thought it would be better as a live because we kind of
mm.
interact and everything like that.
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through the kind of the I would love to know like more of the context on how you thought to kind of integrate with like Alpine.js and like kind of do this
Okay.
stuff custom, and then also kind of just you can give us the high level and we can kind of just jump right in.
Yeah. So I was just looking at options for filtering, and I've got WP Grid Builder,
Hmm.
which is a fantastic facet filtering plugin for WordPress, and works beautifully with Bricks Builder, which was my builder of choice. And But I was coming across situations where you needed something more simple, and I
Hmm.
couldn't justify licensing for that for something so simple. So I
Hmm.
started looking at options, and looked at in Bricks 1.9.8, they've got the experimental facet filtering.
Right.
So I had a look at that, and it looks really good.
Hmm.
It works really, really well. It is still experimental, and it's only for your main post type of posts. You can't use
Hmm.
it for anything else.
Right.
I believe that's changing. Everyone seems to think in the next version it's going to be a lot better, and it's going to have more support for CPTs, etc. But it does work really, really well, and it's a built-in feature in Bricks.
Yeah.
Um, but then Brendan O'Connell, I don't know if he's on today. He normally jumps
Yep.
in, but he mentioned that he was using Pinegrow, and Pinegrow used Alpine.js,
Hmm.
uh, and hadn't heard of it. So because there's obviously so many things to
Yeah.
know, and my curiosity got the better of me, and I had a look at it, and I'm going, holy hell! Within minutes, you can actually get up and running with Alpine.js with never using it in your life,
Hmm.
and you can set up your own filtering and all sorts of things with it. So I was surprised at how quick and easy it was. And when I say quick and easy, it's because I've already got JavaScript experience.
Hmm.
I've already worked a little bit with some reactive frameworks, which I'll explain as we go through. So it made sense to me. But of all of the reactive frameworks that I've played with, like I played with Google's Angular.js years ago, Facebook's React, which is brilliant, but quite a steep learning curve. There's a lot of things you can do wrong with React. How to play with Vue, and Vue's really amazing. It's really user friendly compared to the other two. But when I saw Alpine, I went, it's like a cut down version of Vue. Like, it doesn't have all the features, but the features that it has are pretty useful for most of what you want to do. So I thought, I wonder if this is something that I could use in Bricks. So I played with it and went, wow, that took me like 10 minutes to create something that was finding posts, searching posts, laying them out in a grid. I thought this is something that is worth sharing. So that's where it all came from. Really just my curiosity as to what options are there other than a fully fledged facet filtering system. And by the way, I upset Loic from, he's the developer for WP Grid Builder, because I was so excited about the Bricks facet filtering. I went in there and I said I assume this is how WP Grid Builder is working, and I had a bit of a telling off because I was completely wrong apparently.
Oh, geez.
So sorry, Loic, love your plugin. Never meant to offend it, but got it wrong.
That's funny. Yeah. I think before we dive in, I got one like kind of more high level question around it, because my experience, that's never been how my trajectory has been, where like, okay, like maybe I'll just do this more custom. Like, I mean, Alpine.js seems awesome. I'm excited to learn about it. But like high level though, I've heard of WP Grid Builder. I've never specifically used it. I've used, for this like filtering type thing, I've used Crockablock's Jet Smart filters before, back in the Elementor days. And then, now I've tried the experimental features in Bricks, which is, cool if that ends up continuing to evolve. Had you ever used anything else other than Grid Builder, or have you just, is that kind of been your
I used to use Jet Smart filters quite a bit. Same sort of concept. I think, and I've had this conversation with the Crockablock. I love the Crockablock team. They're just such nice people, and their support is great. I did try Jet Smart filters when they first made it compatible with Bricks. My issue with it at the moment is that the code output from it is a little dated. It's not accessible. So, for example, if there's a pagination set that it puts out, it's all divs and it's all JavaScript to run it. There's no links. There's nothing for accessibility to hook into. And there's no state. So if you refresh the page, you lose your state. Whereas WP Grid Builder has state. All of its output is accessible, and it's just I think a better choice for if you want to build websites that are professional and properly accessible. It's a better choice in that respect. So, but WP Grid Builder, Jet Smart filters, I found it worked properly. It did actually do all of facet filtering and work nicely with Bricks. But it was just that aspect of it that was the reason I didn't use it.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know, because like that's something that I didn't know. I just, if I look at it and it works, then that's great. And I'm always trying to build more accessibly in the build. So we'll see how Bricks continues to evolve, WP Grid Builder, and let's talk about Alpine. You ready? You want me to switch over the screen? Dive in?
Yeah, I'll just move us out of the way. Maybe a second.
Yep, for sure.
So we don't get all this feedback.
Oh, that's all good.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry, amateur hour here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, let me just grab.
If you slide that one back, you're good.
There we go. So we've got a few things going on here. So I guess the first question would be who we're talking to. You got many people in the chat there, Mark?
I think we got about 5 or so on YouTube, and then I think we have some people on X as well. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the first question is there anyone here who doesn't know what a reactive framework is?
I'm gonna raise my hand.
You're gonna raise your hand? Okay.
I mean, I might know once you tell me, but I've never heard of it put like that.
Okay. So in native JavaScript, or if you're using something like jQuery or native JavaScript, let's say, for example, you do a fetch call to a backend to get some data. You get that data back. To update your screen or your DOM, you've got to get, say, for example, you have to get a reference to the element on the page. You then have to, so I've got a truck going, sounds like a garbage truck going on in the background here.
All good.
So you get a reference to the element on the page, then you got to manually tell it to update in some way. So, change the inner HTML or the inner text. So there's all this manual stuff that you got to do to keep track of your data and update things. What reactive frameworks do is basically everything relates back to a data set. And when that data set changes, everything that's connected to it automatically changes and updates. That's the core of a reactive framework. So all you have to do is manage your data. The rest of the stuff happens automatically.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. I think it's definitely going to make more sense as we go through it too.
It is. So here's their very on their Alpine.js.dev on their homepage here. Here's their very simple example of it. So all you have to do is enqueue the Alpine script. You create some data. It's just this is just a JSON object in this case, which you can actually put on the data attribute, on the actual attribute on the element. What we're saying is when we click the button, we want to set open to true, right? We've got a show down here, which says on open, show. So basically, once open becomes true, this content automatically shows. So all I have to do is control what value that open has, and all this automatically decides whether to show or hide.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's what reactive frameworks do. There's a bunch of stuff in here. So you got to set up your data. You can bind, which I'll show you. Probably better off when I show the example. But you can bind attributes from the you bind attributes from the data. So like your href, your image source, all that sort of stuff. You can actually bind those to the data. There's event listeners, which is the X on, which we'll look at. And you can replace the X on with just a @ symbol. X text, which when you're replacing inner, like you select a div and you want to replace the content inside of it, and you'd use the element.inner HTML or inner text. This just automatically does all that for you. So the few things here, these are just, and anyone who's familiar with Vue.js, these are exactly the same as they are in Vue.js, except for it uses an X instead of a V. So if you're familiar with Vue, then straight away you look at this and go, oh, that makes sense. Okay. So there's a very, very strong connection between the two. The one that we'll use here too is this X4, which is like a JavaScript for in loop. So you want to say, if I get back some posts from my backend, I want to iterate through all those posts. I say for, give it a variable name in posts, and that will be my post title. And if there's 10 posts, I'll end up with 10 H2s with the post title. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically what it is. And to use this in Bricks is really, really simple. So what I'm going to show you the example in Bricks. I've got two examples here. Let's bring these across. Sorry, I didn't account for the fact that we had. I was going to get feedback on the video from having two screens. So here's an example here built in Bricks. And this is my XHR tennis. If I do a refresh, I've got one XHR call, which brings back 20 posts. That automatically is rendering onto the screen. If I search this by dogs, I get another XHR call, which is only 2 posts. And now I've got 2 on the screen. Okay, so it's going to the back end, updating my data, and then this automatically updates. I don't have to do a lot of logic to make that happen. And I'll show you that actually if I go to the edit with Bricks.
We got a question from Evan too. Is this the same framework that Grid Builder uses?
I'm not sure what would be Grid Builder. No, actually, I think they've got their own custom code that they use for updating. Okay. But if we look at the JavaScript, that's my JavaScript. That's all the JavaScript that I have.
Okay.
So I'm actually getting data from the back end, updating my data, and then everything automatically renders. And that's the only JavaScript that I have for this this page.
Now, did you write that, or is that
cool.
kind of like boilerplate stuff?
I'll show you that. So that's what I've done is actually created a. We're going to speed things along here. I created a Chat GPT prompt, which will create this for me, which I'll share with you guys if you want it. Yeah. Okay. So the other one we have, in fact, if I got this, I've got two screens going here. I've got another one here, which is another example of it. And this one, and this would be like when you've got, say, if you've got 100 or 200 posts, what I'm doing here is I'm doing an Ajax query to get my 20 posts to start with. Probably should put this on the side so you can see them. They're all there. So there's my 20 posts. And when I do a search on, say, that title, now I've got 2 of 20. It's only showing 2 there, but that's just filtering with JavaScript. That's not even doing another back-end call. So there's only the one original call. The rest of it's just filtering with JavaScript on the page. So you're not going to put any load on your server. And this could be a list of posts. This could be team members. This could be, rooms for rent, whatever it is. It's all done in the browser, not in the back end.
Is this different than what you just did when you typed in dogs, though?
It is. So with the one, sorry, I've got, I'm bouncing all over the place with this here. We'll get to the actual how it works when I build it out. So this is one that's doing this does an XHR call to get the 20 posts in the beginning. When I type in dogs, it does another XHR call and then updates the data.
So that's like more resources to do it this way?
It is, but it's going to get live data. So it's going to go back to the back end and get live data. And if you had if you had, say, 500 or 1,000 entries, you might do it this way anyway, because you don't want to load the whole lot in the one call and then filter it with JavaScript. But if you only got, say, 50 items here, you might as well get them all in the same call and then just filter them with JavaScript.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it depends on your application.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. So what we're going to do here is, and this really probably shouldn't be part of this. This here, I'm going to show you basically what I'm going to start again. So I'm just using WP local, local by Flywheel, and I've got a starter side here. I'm just going to clone this, and we'll call this Live with Mark. This is my go-to for if I'm starting dev on anything for learning. I'll just clone out my base, and then I've got something that's independent that I can just blow away when I'm finished. And I'm not sure how long this is. Normally fairly quick. It is local does run a little bit slower on Windows than it does on Mac, I believe. But I notice when I'm recording live videos and trying to do this, it's a lot slower because they're both writing to the hard drive at the same time, or not the hard drive, the storage at the same time. Show my age here, talking about hard drives. They don't exist anymore, do they? Okay.
It's all good. Yeah. We can talk about that for a second. So have you always used local? Because obviously they have WordPress Studio now, just got released for Windows. And I think there's another one too. Yeah,
I saw WordPress Studio got released for Mac. I didn't realize it was for Windows yet.
Literally like yesterday, I think.
Okay. Look, I find this fine. Like a lot of people, when they see this, go, "Oh, why don't you use InstaWP?" And I'm like, "Well, InstaWP is a subscription product, and I don't need it. I've got my own hosting. I'm going to run up all my dev sites on. and this is only for playing around locally. So, but you can develop locally on this and push to live as well if you want to. But it's I mean, InstaWP is fantastic, and I've seen how quick it is. It's probably quicker than doing this, but here we are. While we're chatting, we've just run up a site. So we're gonna. I don't know if you guys see the UAC prompts in the. You probably don't see what it does on Windows. It prompts you to allow that host redirection. Okay, so it's doing its thing. So we're going to spin it up, and I'm going to show you from scratch how quick it is to get up and running with Alpine. Sorry, I didn't sleep last night, so I'm a bit slow this morning.
Well, you're also up super early. We keep saying that. Back-to-back days for me with Australian guests. You guys are very brave for waking up this early. I appreciate it.
Oh, mate, that's normal. That's normal for us. The sun comes up here, so.
Yeah. I hear you.
So it is taking a little longer than normal while we're on this call, because I think they're probably both writing to the drive at the same time. But that said, I mean, to spin up there it is done. So I've just got to trust the domain certificate. Okay, and we're up and running.
I always had trouble with that. When I used it, I always had trouble with that trusted thing. I must have been doing something wrong.
Okay, so that's it there. It's just spun up another window. All right, so I'll bring that across.
Is there anything special about this, or is this just your blueprint?
This is just a blueprint. So it's just got all my standard plugins that I use. I've got posts. I've just got some FakerPress posts in there. We've changed some of the titles. I've got a CPT in here as well, so I can do some tests on that with some FakerPress posts in there. And so that's basically it. I've got a basic framework. I generally develop with ACSS, but for dev stuff, I've just got a SAS framework I use, which has the same variables that ACSS has. Just for mucking around. So this is ready to go. I also use WP Reset. So this has a baseline, so I can muck around on here. And if it gets out of control, I just reset back to the snapshot.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that's just a really baseline for learning for dev. You really mess it up, you just blow it away and deploy another one. Yeah,
love it.
But this WP reset is brilliant. You can create snapshots at different points and just reset back to those snapshots if you wish to. All right. So what we've got here is we're going to do a new page, and we'll call this Alpine XHR. Okay, where's Alpine.js? It's disappeared on me. Okay, let's bring it up again. Okay, so for Alpine.js, all we need to do is grab that script in the builder, add a code block. Chuck that in there. Enable our execution, render without wrapper, sign the code, and that is Alpine and Q. I wouldn't normally do it this way, but for the demos, it makes sense. In real world, we're better off in queuing that through your child theme or through something like WP Codebox, because it'll be used across, I'd say, multiple sections of your site.
Okay.
But that's all we do to enqueue it. I'm just going to call that.
So you would enqueue it somewhere like that, so it literally, like, that snippet runs, that script runs on every page that you need it on. That's what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. So
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Just for the demo. So I would normally put this into. I use WP Codebox, and you can enqueue external scripts, and there's conditionals on what pages or content you want to load on. So I'd normally put it into there. So basically, that is Alpine enqueued. Now we need to set up a structure. So we're going to set up a section here. I'm just going to call it Alpine app. And I'm going to put a little queue here, which will be my X data, just so I know that's where I put my data attribute. So if we looked at Alpine at the very top level, we've got to tell it that's our data from that point further down the DOM. So everything down from there and down can access this data.
Okay.
All right. So we just need to have that attribute there once we set it up. And there's multiple ways you can set the data up. I'm going to look at the directives here. I'm going to use, scrolling down here, I'm going to use what they call the reusable data because with Alpine, so you can just put in the curly brackets inside your attribute and you can define all your data and your functions and everything in there. But that gets really messy when you've got a lot of code, or if you're in bricks and you've only got a single line input to put that in. So my preference was to use this method where you actually define that data in normal JavaScript. Okay. But the cool thing here is I don't know if you guys have seen the latest update, this ChatGPT 4.0.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Oh my goodness, it is so aware of WordPress. It is just phenomenal. You don't even have to mention WordPress, but you mention something to do with WordPress, and it will automatically map everything that you need to WordPress land. So it's really, really good. So what I've got here is a couple of saved prompts, and I'll share these with you guys. I'll share it with you, Mark, if you wanted to add it to your comment or whatever.
For sure.
So I've got one here called Alpine.js. So that's just as using Prompt Genius for a save prompt. Put that in there. Hit the enter key. This is going to ask me a bunch of questions. The main one is, what context name do I want to use for X data? So I'm just going to call this fetched post. List of variables and properties and their types I want to initialize. I want to fetch some posts, and that's going to be an array. And I'm not going to use pagination. So I'm going to use, what do we want? Fetching. And that's going to be a Boolean. And that'll do for us for now. Okay, what's the name for the fetch function? So the fetch is the JavaScript to do an XHR request to the back end. And we'll just call this get post. And what method we're going to use, a get or a post. I'm just going to press the space bar and enter, and that'll default to get. What's the endpoint URL? I'm just going to use, you can put your own endpoint in here. I'm just going to use the default WordPress REST endpoint for getting posts, which is WP JSON. WP JSON, what is it? Is
there a var in there or something?
WP v2/post, I think it is. I think that's it. Can't remember whether it's the direction that is. I think that, oops.
Need to know, maybe. There you go.
And enter. All right. Is there a list of parameters to include in the fetch? I'd say no, because I'm not going to do any. Yes, search. Actually, I forgot to add search. Forgot to add search in the parameters. So I'm just going to put search. Search text. See if it's smart enough to put it into the parameters. I forgot to put it in there. There you go. Automatically put it in as a parameter.
Wow.
Okay. So here we go. So basically it's created the initialization script for Alpine for me, where I've got a property of a object here for post, which would be my fetch post, a Boolean to say whether I'm fetching or not, and search text if I want to search for something. It's created a function which sets my fetching to true, so we can use that to show a a loader or something like that. It's going to go and fetch from that WP JSON endpoint. If the response is okay, it's going to set my post to whatever the JSON data was. So I didn't have to do much thinking there, did I? I just told it what I wanted it to do, and it's made a function for me, which is exactly what I need. So this is great. Even if you look here, it's even put the correct term in there. So it's changed it from search text to search because it knows that's what that endpoint needs.
Wow.
So it's pretty clever. So I'm going to copy that, come back to our builder, and I'm going to add another code block. There's my code. I'm going to call that my Alpine app. Okay, and we need to put that in a script. Paste that in there. And now that is our script. So we want to execute it. Sign the code, as we always have to. Now we've got a data context called fetch posts. So I'm going to copy that name. That's what I told it to call it in that prompt. We go back to where our X data is. We've got style, attributes, X data. And that is going to be fetch post. So what's going to happen is when this script fetches the data, from that point down, it's going to have access to all that data that it fetched. Yep. Does that make sense so far?
Making sense to me. I'm following along.
Okay. Good. It might need a bit of a watch back for this sort of thing. All right. So that is the getting the data, but what we need to do is we need to tell it to initially fetch that data. Okay, because it hasn't actually gone and got anything yet. It's basically set up the properties and a function to go and get the data. So this is where we're going to use another directive here, which is the init, and we're going to use that on the same level as our data. So what we're going to do up here is on the same level as the data, we're going to add another attribute, which is init, and we want to get post. And see how all we done there is put the function name in, or the function, and because at that point there, this data is available, that function's available. So not only the properties, but the actual function you define here are all available from this point downwards.
Got it.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit save on that and just publish it. And just see if that is actually getting the... Okay. There you go. It just did a post back to the back end and only got 9, because by default it's 10, maximum of 10. So if I wanted to get all of them, I come back to my ChatGPT and I go and I put in here, fetch all posts. So you just tell it in English what you want it to do.
That's amazing.
Okay, no, that's not amazing this time because it didn't actually do it. Okay.
What was it?
So you want to say keep. All posts. Not just 10.
Got a question from Evan too. How much does Alpine.js have on site performance? How much impact?
0. It's actually it renders in the browser using JavaScript. So it's not putting any server load on. In fact, it might even improve your site performance in some ways. Okay. So I've just given it more instruction and it's put the search back in, and now it's going to tell it to per page 100. So it's going to get up to 100 posts. So we copy that, go back to our browser here, and in our app data here, just replace the whole lot with what we have in ChatGPT. Oops. sign the code. And now we've got 20 posts.
Nice.
So it's as simple as that for getting the data. Now what we need to do is come up with a structure to lay that data out. So I'm going to add some blocks here. I'm going to add a block. I'm going to add we're going to call that a template, and I'll show you why soon. I'm just going to duplicate that.
Evan asked, does it make an external call? Like I'm not exactly sure what that means, but there's no.
So in the
call.
example that we just gave, yes. So that's actually, well, this is calling our own URL. So it's calling the own URL for that, but it can be anything. That can be, pulling data from, from Twitter. It could be pulling data from Instagram. It could be whatever you want it to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, does that? I don't know enough. I'm just asking random JavaScript questions. Like as a JavaScript framework, like that's. I think Brendan said it's very lightweight. It loads via CDN. All the JS is in the HTML. Is his understanding. So like, yeah, I guess like how does it enqueues it? So does it just load? Does it load that? Does it when you write the script tag for Alpine.js? Does it like just bring everything it needs in basically? And then just call it from there?
It's a very small framework. So if we have a look at the JavaScript here, there's Alpine.js there. Whoops. What size is it? Hold on, just do a Control F5. Oops. Actually loading. It redirects, that's right. So they're on the redirection. See, that doesn't look right. Where is that? 20K. Okay. So it's a 20K script.
Interesting.
So it's a very, very, very lightweight. And you can download, if you wanted to not use a CDN, you can download it and queue it from your own child theme. So it's extremely lightweight. And that's the big difference between this and something like Vue or React or whatever. They have a lot more features, but there was also more of a payload on them when you're enqueuing it as well. And I think for simple things like this, it's just not needed. And so Brendan was saying with the Alpine.js, yes and no. So you can't see, for example, in here, we're just putting pure JavaScript straight within an attribute on an HTML tag. So that is the core of how simple this is. And we will use some of that here. But what we used for the data was we used this reusable data method where we're actually setting up our data with pure JavaScript that's outside of these tags. It's just a lot easier. Yeah. And the main reason for that is because in Bricks, you've just got a single line. Like we have a look at an attribute here, for example. And I know Brendan's going to say if you have automatic theming, you can turn that into a text area. But that's what we've got to type our JavaScript in. So if you got JavaScript like this, typing it in there, it's not exactly easy to read. Yeah. So I like this method. It keeps it. I actually prefer having it external to it anyway. But all of the JavaScript inside your application in here is just going to be pure JavaScript straight inside the attribute.
Gotcha.
Okay. So in here, we're going to carry on with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create. What are we going to do here? We're going to create a. We're going to create a title, some basic text, maybe a text link. And that will be that. And then we're going to do what they call an X4. So we come back to our Alpine, we get an X4, which is a loop. So in their example, they've got an array of colors, and then they loop through those by assigning each of these colors to an attribute called color. Okay. So what I'm going to do is have a look at what do we get back here. With our network tab. Oh, there we go. XHR. So this is the data we got back from that standard WordPress endpoint. And what we can see is on each of these elements, if we want to set the title, actually, sorry, I've jumped ahead here. We've got to look at our data, and our data is called posts. So our property is called posts. So back here, what we would do is on that template, we're going to add an attribute, which would be x4, and then we're going to be post in posts. This could be item in. Actually, let's make it more of it. I'm going to call this item, so it doesn't get confusing for you guys. So posts is this attribute here, which is an array that got fetched from that back end.
Mm-hmm.
Not losing you there, I hope. So this array that came from the back end here, that array is going to be what's the array that's sitting on our posts property here.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yep. So what we're going to do here is on that heading, we're going to add an attribute. Actually, so we haven't done the for. Yes, we have. I'm just going to put a little note on there. So we know that's where our for loop is.
I mean, that would
by the
essentially
way,
be your block card, right?
Yeah.
Your card
So this is what we're
block,
going to
yeah.
loop. We're going to loop on that. Not using a bricks query loop, but we're going to use a loop through the for in or x4.
Right.
Okay. So that's what we're going to do. That. By the way, if you look at the x4, there's some comments down here where it must be a template tag and it can only contain one root element. That's really, really important. So what we have to do is say our template for, sorry, we put that in the wrong place. Wrong place. Wrong place. It's got to go up there. I'll call this item. Trying to think and answer questions and do this at the same time is quite a challenge.
Yep, I hear you.
So we'll do it on here. So it's the x4, and we're going to call this item in post.
Okay.
Well, the next one will be quicker than this. We'll duplicate this out to show the JavaScript filtering one. But so that's that there. We're going to loop through that. And so what we're doing is we're going to make sure that that element is a template tag, or the for won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's exactly what it says in the documentation here. It has to be a template tag, and it can only contain one root element. So what we're doing is we're creating one root element, which is the item.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
So your item is really like more like your card in
Wrapper.
a sense.
Yeah, could be a card, wrapper, whatever you like to call it.
And
so this
template
template is going to replicate,
mm-hmm.
but it's going to replicate that first item that's in there.
Got it. Could you have made it the container, the template, or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you wanted to loop a container, you can make the container your. You actually have to turn that into from a div into a template.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Cool.
Yep. So it could be anything you like that you want to loop on.
Got it.
All right. So in the item now, so back here in our for, we are going to have a property called item, which is each element in the posts array that we got from the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is on our item on the heading, we're going to now tell it, we're going to bind that by typing in X HTML, and then we're going to use the item as our root. This is where you put the JavaScript directly into the value. So let's have a look at what we got back from the other end. One item, if we looked at that, we've got a title, but the title's an object that has a property called rendered.
Yep.
Okay. And this is the default data that comes back from that WordPress endpoint.
Mhm.
So what we have to do here is put title, whoops, dot rendered. Okay, so we're looking from our actual array element. We're looking for the title object with the rendered property.
Yep.
If I save that now, look at that. All our titles have updated to, so we've got 20 of these, and the titles are all updated.
Wow.
Okay, so once you go, this takes time understanding and getting through to the beginning, but once this is working, you see the power of it.
So hang on, go back to the builder for a second for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so instead of just going into the heading and clicking the dynamic data button and setting it as dynamic data, you're just doing it via attributes in the builder. And then and you're never going to see this in the back end, right?
Correct.
So you have to just kind of look at it, see the attributes, and then when it gets rendered on the front end, it's going to take your attributes with the Alpine and it's going to just spit out the proper dynamic data and query as you told it to. Like just
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Pretty straightforward.
So we're going to call this our excerpt.
I might be getting ahead of us though, but do you have to do this way? Do you have to create the data this way through the attributes in order to ultimately filter them and search them?
Correct. Okay. So this is how Alpine.js works. It's a JavaScript library, and this is all binding from your data that you've got here through to those attributes in HTML.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to do the excerpt one now. If we have a look at the data that came back from there, look at the first element, and we look at our excerpt. Where is it? There. So the excerpt has a rendered property, which is the data. Okay. So what we need to do is an attribute of X. Actually, I'll show you the other property, which is the X, and I'll show you why you'd use X to HTML. So if you use X dash text, and then you did item dot excerpt dot rendered. If we did that and had a look in the front end, see we've got the P there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it's doing is when you tell it it's text, it's using the JavaScript inner text property. So it renders your HTML as text. Okay, but if you want that to be HTML, you got to tell it to render as HTML. Okay, and then if you don't see the P tags, it'll actually render that as a P tag.
Interesting, because that's kind of like saved in that text there. What kind of is that just a text field in the back end?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've just made that a basic text field.
Got it. Okay. So you got to render it as HTML. Got it.
Yep. So render as HTML if you want it to render as HTML. Now the next thing I'm going to do is the text link. This is a little different. So actually we're going to make that a link. Just put a pound, as you Americans call it, a pound on it. Now with this one, we need to bind data to it. So because it's an attribute, so we need to bind the attribute. Where's our binding? So binding, where is our bind? X bind. Here we go. So X bind is for say, for example, you got the type of text. We're going to bind our placeholder to the placeholder property. You use the colon. You can put X bind, or you can just do colon and then the property. So in this case, we want the href. So I'm going to add the attribute of the colon href, and then have a look at our data over here and on our network. When we look at elements here, our link is just a pure string. It's not an object. So we can just use that link there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use our item dot link. Okay, save that. Okay, now these are a link, which links off to the post. All right, so we're bound. So you use binding when it's binding to a property like class, href, source, all that sort of stuff. You just bind the value.
Gotcha.
The X text and X HTML is to replace the text to HTML in between the opening and closing of that tag.
Got it.
Yeah. So you bind them in there. So that is pretty much what you do to render a loop of data that and this doesn't have to be from a back end. This could be from just a JavaScript array that on your front end. This could be a list of to-dos. This could be posts. This could be whatever you want it to be.
Yep.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I don't know how we're going for time here. We've got a little bit of time we have. So the next bit will be a lot quicker, but you guys with me, or is this too much for you?
I've been monitoring the chat. Seems like we kind of all good. Okay. I pretty much understood all that. And just to recap though, everything that we did there was using Alpine.js, but we haven't got to the filtering piece of it yet, but we needed to do all that. So okay, so that's kind of where obviously it makes sense. You can't see it in the builder, but you see it on the front end. Looks sweet. Okay, dope.
Correct.
Sweet.
So that's the only thing you can't do unless Thomas comes up with a way that we can render our JavaScript like this in the builder. Then you won't be able to see it in the builder.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another problem that we'll need to solve, which I'll show you here. If we change this to a grid, so I change that to a grid, just make it 3 rem. 1 FR, 1 FR. What we'll see in the front end is a missing grid item. And the reason for that is because our template is taking up one location in that grid. So what we have to do is we have to set the display of that template to none. And the way we do that is from the this template. And normally I would actually do this with classes, but I'm just doing all this at ID so we don't confuse people further. You would normally go into there. So we're going to CSS. We're going to add root. I don't know if you noticed, I'm not using advanced seamless so people don't complain about me using stuff they haven't got, and it slows me down considerably.
All good. Smart man.
Display none. Okay, now problem is we can't see it now in the editor. So what we have to do is use bricks. When you go into the front, when bricks renders in the front end, it adds a class which is bricks. Is front end. Okay, so what we're doing is saying if, and this is on the body, so if the body's got bricks as front end, then we want to hide this element. Then we can edit it in the editor. It solves our problem here.
Wow.
Okay, because all we've done is told it to hide that, because there's our rule there. And again, I wouldn't do that at the ID. I'd do that as a class if I was building this properly. All right, so that solves that problem. Now the filtering, let's create another container and we'll stick that up. Yeah, let's call that our search. In our search, we're just going to add a div. And we'll call that our search import. I'll just do this really, really basically. In our search import, we're going to make that a input. And we're going to tell it is a type of text and it is, let's give it a placeholder of search. Okay, so we've got a really basic import, which is type of text with a placeholder called search. Now, the next thing we do here is we're going to use what they call X model. X model binds the value of an input to a data attribute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in here, for example, the example I gave here, you've got an attribute called message. Your input, your X model is message. So whenever this input changes, that property there changes. Yep.
Yep.
So in here, we're going to add our X model. Oops, typing properly. And if we look at our ChatGPT, our search text is what we're wanting to change. So our model is search text. So every time I type in here, it's going to update that search text value with whatever I typed in that input.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that there is just changing. All that's doing is changing that value. Now we need to tell it to call this function whenever that value changes. Okay, and with Alpine, it's X on, which is always the same as Vue. They generally replace X on with the @ symbol. It does exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So let's come back here. All we have to do is add another attribute, which is the @input. Now, input is like your on key up or on key press.
Mm-hmm.
We want to call get post. So bind our whatever we type in there to the search property, and then whenever we get an input in there, call get post. And we're going to actually tidy this up a little bit too, because that's going to be, I'll show you a problem with that as well. Okay, so this is our search text. If I start typing, I type D, O, oh, what happened there? Did I not save that? Input. On the search input.
WP code box.
What have I done wrong, mate?
Hmm.
I've done something wrong here.
Was the error? Did the error say WP code box though? That was a little.
Oh no, that's it's trying to load a WP.
Okay.
It's because I've cloned out this site. It's trying to load a code box, WP code box JavaScript that doesn't exist. That's okay.
Gotcha.
Let me just do that again. So try changing it to X on. It shouldn't make a difference. So it should be X on. X on input. Is it get posts? It is. Right, I just ran through this morning before jumping onto this, and it worked beautifully. It's going to make a liar out of me. So I'm going to go maybe console.
Do you have the other one? The other one you showed earlier too? The other demo?
I can fire that up, yeah. Just going to see if this is actually firing. It's not even firing. Why aren't you firing? Let me see in here. Oh, rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. Okay.
This is where people learn here.
Okay, rookie mistake. Okay, remember I said to you this X data, that point down is where these are available, but I've put my search box above that X data. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to change that into a block. I'm going to stick that there. I might stick another container in there. So it's Okay, so there it is there. Save that. Okay, there we go.
Nice. So at this point, if you type a certain thing, is it supposed to work? Oh, okay, there you go.
There you go. So I'm just going to clear that out. So if I type, get rid of that. If I type U, it does a query at the back end. LT, and it's just done a query there, and it's only brought back one result because that's the only one that's got the word ultimate in it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But we don't want this to happen. We don't want every time we press a key, we do a back end query. Well, you're going to put some pretty severe load on your server.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what they have in here is in the Xon is you've got some modifiers. What we want to do is we want to debounce by amount of time. Mm-hmm. So we're going to add on that Xon. So on the Xon, which by the way, we can just put back to a at now that I've got the data in the right place. We can add dot debounce dot 500 milliseconds. Okay. Now, if I start, watch the live network tab, and if I type ULT now, it only does one query because it's waited for a minimum of half a second before it'll do the query. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So if we get rid of that, if I type U, waits half a second. L, waits half a second. If I want this to only query when I've got a minimum of 3 letters, that's where you use JavaScript. So what we do is typical JavaScript. We would do if search length, search text, dot length is greater than or equal to 3. Get post.
Okay.
Yep. So it's standard JavaScript. This is what Brendan was talking about, where you just write this into the attribute, and it's just makes so much sense rather than trying to find that elsewhere in code.
We had a comment here. It said I tend to go with code in the code block and not even build out the structure, as I find it's slowing me down to have to click through attributes and stuff. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. And you go a step further by having this template in the child theme and preloaded into the bricks, making it easier to edit in VS Code. That's a lot there, but yeah, I feel I understand now, because if you start having to do more stuff, then there might be more things to manage in more places. So that makes sense.
Yep. So what you could do in here is, if you want to check with your search length is greater than 3 and you're going to use this and it's got what belong code, I would probably create another function in here, and you just call that function. Okay, that function will be available everywhere from that X data down.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So instead of having it all here, you could say if search length, if min search, then get posts. Or maybe the search on min. You might have a function here, search on min 3, and that would actually, you just call from here, search on min 3. That would check to make sure we've got at least 3 characters, and then call get posts.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of options. This is just a really simple way of just looking here. Now, this has a problem here that we just introduced, because if I type in health, okay, it's gone off and it's got that. But if I go back to 0, it doesn't search again, because I haven't got 3 characters. So we could just put in there or equals. And by the way, because you're inside an attribute, you can't use double quotes, because you'll bugger the attribute up. You got to use single quotes or backticks. I'll show you why when we look at the front end. So if we look at the input there, see it's actually typing it into the attributes. So if we put double quotes here, it's going to bugger this HTML up.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you can only use single quotes or backticks, but that fixes the problem for us. So I type now. So that filtered, and if we take that out, it'll also filter. Did that filter? No. Left-hand side. Age-old issue. JavaScript 3 equals. Okay. Okay, so that's searched. If we clear it out, it searches as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's pretty much how the Alpine searching works with XHR. What I'm going to do here, instead of creating another example, I'm going to show you how you can do this with back to our ChatGPT and do it by filtering with JavaScript rather than doing an XHR call every time we want to search. Yeah. So in here, I'm going to tell it to modify this function. I want to add a property of property filtered posts, add a function. Too early in the day. Add a function, apply filter, update, filter the filter by filter title by search text. I'll see if it's smart enough to work all the rest of this out. So we'll just do that. Okay, so we've got a filter post array. We're going to apply filter function, which gets our search text, and it uses a standard post filter. So now what we can do now is when it's getting the post, it's getting all the posts, and then it's calling the apply filter. So we're going to use filtered posts now as our property. Grab all that. I know there's going to be a rewatch for you, Mark. It's a lot to take in.
I'm hanging in there. I mean, it does make sense, and it does seem very lightweight. It's just
yes,
yeah.
And once I'm thinking and talking at the same time. Once you're familiar with this, it's actually so straightforward to do. Okay, so now I've changed that. What I need to do now is go back to my template 4 style. I'm going to in filtered posts on my. That's okay. The get post will be the same because we're going to initially get the post, which will automatically filter the posts. And on our search, instead of that, we want to apply filter. So we haven't done much, and this should work. Touch wood. Okay, so that. All right. So we've done one XHR call. If I type health.
Wow.
Yep, we've got two results.
Sick.
Check
So
that out.
that loads them all at the beginning, and then you're just filtering the stuff.
JavaScript. You see, there's only one call, and the rest is filtering. Yeah.
Okay.
So then what we can do here, let's say, for example, we want to know quantity. So we just add just above that. I'm going to add a basic text. Basic text. Let's set that to be I'll just do span X of okay. So we've got two properties here. So I'm going to put this as my X text equals and what we want is our filtered posts dot length of, and the other one we're going to make just our post dot length. So that's all the posts, and that's the filtered posts.
You need a double quote in there after the last second one.
Where's
Post
that?
dot length. Post dot length. Do you need quotations?
There you go.
Nice. Okay.
Look, this Bricks Builder hasn't updated. Let's just refresh that and see if it actually did update that. I'm having that trouble from time to time with this. There we go. It did work. So if we now look at the front end, we've got 20 of 20. Health, 2 of 20.
Wow.
So you see all the data from that point down is available to any JavaScript function, which is what makes this so powerful. You can have status, you can have, the latest quote, the, I can't even think what you can have here, but you pretty much whatever you can provide in data at that point there, you can automatically and reactively update that data just by linking it. Yep.
Makes sense. I mean, I do see the power of this because, you can just do it anyway. You can just, that was super simple. I thought you were going to have to do other stuff or attributes or whatever, but you just wrote it in there, just as attributes of that span there. That's pretty cool.
Correct. So it's just HTML. So basically, it just, whether you do it through Bricks and change the properties in Bricks, or whether you write it out as HTML here, in the front end, it's the same stuff. It's the same HTML.
It's pretty dope.
So that's the two ways of doing it. So there's the XHR call every time you filter and search, or get all the data and then just filter here. I mean, this could be, let's say, for example, you've got a couple of hundred posts, and you could just have a list of all the post titles with a link to them, and then basically a filter up here to filter them, and it's really, really fast because it's not doing a back-end call every time you search.
Yeah. Do you? I definitely found that difficult when I was using Elementor and Jet Smart filters too, because it's just slow. Because it's like rendering a lot of things. It's probably does it do a back end call and it's got to render everything on the front end again, kind of too, especially if you don't have caching or something. So yeah, there's a lot there. My question would be, Brendan said very cool stuff. I sort of understand it. I thought you wrote the book on this stuff, Brendan.
I thought he did too. He's got a great poker face.
My question is, and we don't have to go in depth on it necessarily, but can you utilize this? This is searching and filtering. Can you do the other things too? If you wanted to have check boxes, and does this allow for that? Would you be able to maneuver something to make that happen too? With Alpine?
Yeah, as in you wanted to check a checkbox or uncheck a checkbox depending on what the data is.
Yeah, I mean, just any other types of filter. If I had a big list of e-commerce items, you'd probably have, or posts or whatever, then you'd probably have a search, but then you might also have categories maybe that you could check or uncheck,
yes.
kind of like an Amazon or those types of things.
So that's when you're getting, and this is one of the things that I found when I started looking into all this. Yeah, the word facet filtering has kind of become a bit of a buzzword. And when anyone thinks of any kind of search, they're calling it facet filtering. To me, this is not facet filtering. This is just a straight search or a straight filter. Okay. When you look at facet filtering, it's a collection of things all affecting the outcome. So it could be, what you selected in a drop down for the category, what you selected in a checkbox for the color, whatever it is. All those things combined is what affects the end result that you get.
Okay, so it's like multiple things affecting the grid, basically, or the results.
Yeah, so I actually asked ChatGPT to explain to me, because I couldn't find anything online that really gave me a decent explanation of what is when someone says facet filtering, what do they actually mean? And ChatGPT did a pretty good job of it, actually, because basically the way it described it is that each part, so a search box, a drop down, a radio selector, whatever, that's a facet of your filter. Or a part of your filter. So they all work together. If you're going to go to that extent, I would definitely recommend using something like JetSmart Filter or WP Grid Builder. And even though you can do it in this, what you have to do is build up your query. And this is using the default WordPress REST endpoints. If you wanted it to work differently, you've got to create your own WordPress REST endpoints. Okay, so if you wanted to, send 5 different potential properties to search on, you're going to have to create that yourself.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. We got one that said I would use Isotope to filter if I would go the JS route, filter something like that. I'm assuming. I don't know what Isotope is. That might be another?
It's another reactive library that does this type of thing. It's an option. Isotope has a lot of really cool things about it. I just thought this was easy for me. I mean, it made sense to me when I looked at it. Different things make different sense to different people based on your experiences. This just made sense to me. They do have some plugins, not a lot. So for intersecting, that's for like intersection observers, things like that. Anchors, collapse, morph, sort. They actually have some plugins that you can install. The sort one works really, really well. You just basically add the sort, and you tell each item here that it's sortable, and then it becomes sortable. Yeah, so I basically would enqueue that sort, and then when I've got my list over here on each of these items here, I would make that item, I would add my X sort above that, X sort above that, and make that a sort item. Right, and then I've got my drag and drop sort. It's just super easy. I mean, you need to set up your styles for it, but that's an example here. Look, that's what it does.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah, and all I've had to do is enqueue one script, add that to the URL at the top, add this to the items I want to be sortable, and it works. And it does have a bunch of classes it adds in the background, so you can style those classes when it's moving and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I didn't realize that's how I was going to sort those, like drag and drop sort.
Yeah.
That's really dope.
So similar, Isotope will do all that. There's plenty of libraries that'll do that. Isotope's a very, very good library. It's been used by a lot of people for a long time now. I haven't used it a lot myself. I hadn't found a need for it, but I had a look at it a while ago, and if it floats your boat, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Brendan said we're gonna make Notion, but in bricks.
Yeah.
I got a question about that though. Just now that I'm thinking about that, because that's sick. I love like interactivity like that, even though I have no idea how to do it. But now I guess I can play with it. But like when you move those, is it just changing that on the front end, or are you able to like store that somewhere? I'm literally thinking like Google Tasks, right? So you had like 5 tasks, and you change this like the order of them, and then you go on your phone and you're able to see that new order. Does it like store that, or how does that like? Is that like a different?
There will be. There'll be a event that it fires. I have to find it. It'll be in here somewhere. Okay. Sorting, sort handlers.
JavaScript.
Passing a handler to the function.
Confusing as hell.
So this here. So basically what it's saying is if you've got the X sort, you can add a function in here, right? So whenever the sort changes, it'll call that function. This is just going to alert. So if I drag that, drop it, it's just alerted that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That could be just another function in here to, save post order. So save post order, it does another back-end call and then updates your post order in the back end. Okay. But again, you have to create that. You're going to have to go into your REST endpoints and create an endpoint to do that for you. Yeah. What I have got for you, which I'll share, I'm not going to go through it here. I've got another script that I've created, another WordPress script for ChatGPT here, which creates REST endpoints. I'll share this with you, and you can do whatever you like with it. But basically, you go through and answer these questions. What prefix? That's okay. I'll just quickly go through this so you can see what it does. That's what we're going to use our namespace. You can change that. Okay, what is the action name? Save, sort, order. That will be a post because we're going to send some data with it. Maybe. Then you authenticate. No, we're not going to bother authenticating. Yeah, we should. I say edit post. Is there an edit post capability? Editor. Editot. Is there such a thing as editot?
Editons.
Okay, any parameters would be the menu order and post ID. Actually, that would be an array. So we'll just rush through this to show you how this can create an input. You've got to answer the questions well. What should it call? It should save the post. Save the post menu order. This is what I'm loving about this new version of ChatGPT. It knows WordPress so well. Do you want to? No, we don't want to define any more actions. Okay, here it is.
Wow.
So it's got so you'd have to send a nonce with it. You'd have to be familiar with this because it's got to find the current user and make sure that you are an editor. It's going to check your properties, your parameters. So this is for sanitization, for security. Here's our sort order, and that's going to go through and update the post with the menu. This is a single post. But that's a prompt I created for creating your REST endpoints. Okay. And then once you've got your REST endpoint, so this one here will be, that's your REST endpoint. So it's giving me an example JavaScript function to consume that. I could copy this as a function, paste it into here as a function, and then I can call that from my property. I'll just call that function there. Confused?
I mean, I think I pretty much understand. I'm definitely not capable enough to do it right now, but like, I mean, it does. I just kind of first time looking at like Alpine.js. I mean, it does seem very straightforward as far as, there was nothing really crazy there, especially the way that Bricks lets you do all that. Even like from a page building perspective, obviously you could just do it. You could just write it all yourself.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that's sick. And that's just
so when you get into the back end stuff, there is a whole other range of skills that you need. You need to know how a little bit more about WordPress back end, REST endpoints, security. It's a lot. It's another level on top of using Alpine to display and sort and filter stuff in your front end.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Mate, hopefully I haven't confused you. I thought this was going to run much simpler than it is because it seems simple in my head. You know?
I mean, I didn't think it was too bad. I think the people in the chat really enjoyed it and benefited from it. I know they probably know it even more than I do, so that's dope.
Okay.
But I mean, I think this was a great intro to kind of for me into Alpine.js, and then also into just kind of doing things that are a little bit like extending, the builder capabilities and everything like that. I think that was awesome. I really appreciate it,
Mm.
brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny. It took me an hour and a half to explain something that took me 10 minutes to do in the first place.
It's always tougher. You gotta like really like think it out. Like you gotta like explain how you think. And I know you do this stuff all the time. So like you're always like you just know it. You know what I mean? And then you gotta try to
Mm.
explain it, and it's always takes longer. I feel like so. I thought this was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions or anything like that, if you're in the chat, definitely let us know here. Um, but yeah, have you kind of like other questions regarding this? So like, have you used this anywhere yet? I mean, obviously, you just kind of like started playing around with it, but can you think of any good use cases? Like, try to
Okay.
keep it simple. I would think, right, at first with
Okay.
what we showed
What
here.
prompted this is we've got a job we're actually doing paid discovery on at the moment. It's a site built quite some time ago, and the developer used a very complex back-end framework. They've had 4 developers try and manage the site, and every one of them breaks it every time they touch it.
Jeez.
So they're ready for a rebuild. And one of the applications in it is they're a childcare centre, a franchise. And they've got about 100 childcare centres, and they have a search facility. We can search for the centre sitting on top of Google Map, which shows you all the pins on the map.
Oh dear.
And then you can click on the map and it gives you directions, all that sort of stuff. We got to rebuild all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking at options, and I thought, well, all we need is a very simple search on a CPT to bring back the data and display the Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be the first use. I will definitely use this method. That'll be the first use for me doing this. And it was only 2 weeks ago that Brendan, gave me a bit of a nudge in the side and said, "Have you looked at Alpine.js?" So
Yeah.
I hadn't even looked at it before.
Definitely let me know. I'd love to see that implementation. We got a comment too. Would be nice to see some examples for Chart.js integration through Alpine.js. There's just so many
Yeah,
JSs. I'm assuming Charts has something to do with
yeah.
charts.
It's I think was that another one developed by Google? I think it might have been. It's for displaying infographics like pie
Okay.
charts and bar charts and all that sort of stuff, with basically putting in data, raw data.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see how that would be useful.
yeah, yeah. If you're doing like analytics sort of stuff, displaying dashboards to clients with analytics and things like that, it makes sense.
Yeah,
I haven't had a use for it yet, so well, not for years anyway. So
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. Have you um like obviously like you kind of thought about this um as a concept for that specifically, but like
Hmm.
I mean up until this point you just said you've been specifically using WP Grid Builder.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Okay.
Look, uh, to be honest, as I said, our business is 18 months old
Right.
for building websites. The first year was really figuring out what the hell we do. How do we
Right.
build websites, and who do we build them for, and who don't we build them for, and how do we, I guess, price everything and systems. And so it's really been only the last 6 months that we've been, I would say, more actively building sites.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all new to me. That's why it's all exciting, all this new stuff, learning. And so I don't have a lot of examples to give. Most of the sites we started building were typical small business websites, just informational sites.
Mm-hmm.
We did a couple of Woo sites that we had to modify pretty heavily for, they want to turn them into quoting systems rather than shopping carts. So we did that with bricks, which was fun. But apart from that, it's just been really simple sites. We've used WP Grid Builder probably on 4 sites
Okay.
so far. and it works really well. It is a very, very good plugin that works really, really, really well with bricks. And I think for me, if I was going to want Facets, like if I was going to build a Woo store and I wanted all the filtering, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be trying to figure it all out with Alpine. I'd just get the license for WP Grid Builder and away you go. Because it all works perfectly, and you don't have to think about it. So,
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I mean, it's fun to play with. I think it's fun. It's good if you've got a simple use case. I'm certainly not going to spend days on this figuring stuff out. Okay? So, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Awesome.
Past those days.
Yeah. No, I feel yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been great. It's been great, Alan. Anything else you think that we need to touch on with it, or?
No, I
anything
think
else
that's an overview. I think I probably should have run through this first because, as I say, what seemed very simple in my head became a little bit more complex when I'm trying to think who am I talking to and explaining it. So
people love the details, man. I thought it was fantastic. Like I said, it was at a good pace. I could understand it. Obviously it was my first time seeing it, but like I still, I feel like I could jump in there and kind of like get most of it, and then kind of look at some documentation. I think our audience loved it, so I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm assuming a lot of the people watching probably already know you, but if they don't, for some reason, you want to tell them what you got going on, where they can find you and everything like that?
So I'm pretty active in the Bricks Facebook community, just helping out in there. But obviously the YouTube channel that you shared, which is just really me doing brain dumps when I feel like it. Nothing flash, but it's just I'm not looking to grow or monetize out of it. It's just me sharing ideas. So but always happy to help. I don't generally do one-on-ones. I discourage that because we just don't have the time for it. But happy if people ask for ideas if it interests me, and I might make some tutorial on it if it interests me. But tend to try and shy away from. I get a lot of people trying to friend you or send you DMs.
Yeah.
And we just really as you would get now, I guess you just don't really have the time to do that. So yeah, I'd love to, but got to make money as well. Yeah.
Totally hear you. I dropped a link to Alan's channel, WP Easy, in the chat again, guys. Make sure you head over there. Subscribe if you're not already. Alan, brother, it's always a pleasure. Love to have you back on again next time you want to chat about some topic and teach me. I'd love to hear more about the info. So
you might make it something maybe less mind screwing next time.
Yeah. I think it's all good, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you guys so much in the chat. We appreciate you jumping in here. We'll talk to you in the next one.
All right. Have a good night.